Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the world of physical education, or PE, as most of us probably remember it from our school days.
Yeah.
Remember those gym classes? Were they something you looked forward to,
Bro.
or were you one of those kids maybe coming up with creative excuses to skip them?
Yeah, I think those early experiences in PE can really have a lasting impact, kind of shaping our relationship with physical activity as we go through life.
Yeah,
It's interesting how those memories, whether they're positive or negative, they really can stay with us.
for sure. And speaking of lasting impacts, today we're going to be taking a look at an academic research paper from 2006.
Okay.
It focuses specifically on Catholic primary schools in Brisbane, Australia.
Right.
Now, you might think, 2006, that's a bit of a throwback, but as we dig into this research, you'll see that many of the issues that they raise are surprisingly relevant, even today.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this research doesn't start with the sunny side of PE.
Oh.
It actually begins by highlighting a declared crisis in Australian physical education, going all the way back to the early 1990s.
A crisis.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What kind of crisis are we talking about here?
Well, in 1992, there was a pretty significant Senate inquiry, and it really exposed some major problems with the way PE was being implemented in Australian schools.
Oh, wow.
The inquiry uncovered things like a lack of resources, not enough time being allocated to PE, and even concerns about the actual teaching methods that were being used. It was a
Yeah.
pretty scathing report and really shook things up at the time.
Wow, okay, so that sounds pretty serious. So this research that we're diving into today takes place after all that drama has kind of unfolded, right?
Right.
A new curriculum was implemented in 1999, and this study aimed to see how things were playing out in three Catholic primary schools in Brisbane. Did they manage to address those issues that were raised in the Senate inquiry?
Well, that's exactly what this research set out to explore.
Yeah.
And one of the most compelling findings was the significant influence of having a dedicated, qualified PE specialist teacher.
Okay.
It seems that the presence or absence of such a specialist could really make or break the effectiveness of a school's PE program.
So it's not just about having any teacher kind of squeezing in a bit of PE between other
Yeah.
subjects.
Right.
Having a specialist like dedicated to PE actually makes a noticeable difference.
Exactly. The study found that in schools with specialist PE teachers, the programs were far more comprehensive, covering a broader range of activities and going, way beyond just kicking a ball around.
Hmm.
And perhaps even more importantly, students in those schools showed a much higher level of interest and enthusiasm for PE.
That makes sense. I mean, I imagine a teacher who's truly passionate about PE could inspire their students in a way that someone who's just kind of going through the motions might not, right?
Yeah.
But is passion enough? I mean, what are the specific qualities or training that make a PE specialist truly effective?
That's a great question. And while passion is definitely a plus, the research kind of digs a little deeper and highlights the importance of expertise as well.
Okay.
Effective PE specialists, they bring a deep understanding of motor skill development, pedagogical approaches that are specifically tailored for physical education, and the ability to create those inclusive and engaging learning environments.
Yeah.
They're equipped to guide students, not just in developing those fundamental movement skills, but also in fostering a lifelong love of physical activity.
So even if a school recognized the need for a PE specialist,
Mhm.
and even if they managed to hire one, there's still a chance it might not be enough if that specialist wasn't adequately trained.
That's a key insight from the research. Just having someone fill the role, putting a body in that position isn't enough.
Right.
And unfortunately, this study found that even with the new curriculum in place, some schools really struggled to find qualified specialists.
Oh, wow.
The research gives a pretty striking example of one school where the PE specialist wasn't really familiar with the curriculum.
And that led to quite a bit of confusion among the students, and even instances where, where physical activity was actually being used as a form of punishment.
Oh, that sounds counterproductive, to say the least. I mean, using physical activity as a punishment just reinforces those negative associations with movement and exercise. Like, what a missed opportunity.
Right. Absolutely.
Did the research shed any light on why some schools struggle to find well-trained PE specialists? Was there like a shortage of qualified teachers?
Well, that's an important point to consider. And yes, the study does suggest that this lack of properly qualified PE specialists could be partly attributed to insufficient support from teacher training institutions.
Hmm.
It seems that even in the early 2000s, new teachers were often graduating without adequate training in PE pedagogy, and there was this real lack of ongoing professional development opportunities to help them, stay current and keep their skills sharp. So even if someone was passionate about teaching PE, they might not have been equipped to do it effectively because they lacked the proper training and support from those educational institutions.
Yeah.
That's disheartening.
Yeah.
But is this just an Australian issue, or were other countries grappling with similar challenges in PE?
Well, that's where the research gets really interesting. It actually points out that this wasn't just an isolated problem in Australia.
Okay.
The study highlights global debates surrounding the purpose of PE, how to make it engaging, how to adapt it to the needs of modern students and societies. It seems that lots of countries were struggling to make PE engaging, effective, and relevant.
It's fascinating to see how these trends were playing out on an international scale. It sounds like a lot of people were realizing that simply throwing a ball out and hoping for the best just wasn't going to cut it anymore, right?
Exactly. And this is where the research goes beyond just identifying the problems, and it starts digging into potential solutions.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that the primary school years are a critical window for developing essential motor skills. And it argues that quality PE during this period can have a profound impact on a child's, lifelong relationship with physical activity.
So it's about much more than just learning how to play specific sports or games.
Right.
It's about building that foundation for a lifetime of healthy movement habits, right?
Yeah.
What exactly do we mean when we talk about motor skills? What are some examples, and why are those early years so crucial?
So motor skills, those refer to those fundamental movement skills that really form the building blocks of what we call physical literacy. You're talking about things like coordination, balance, spatial awareness, agility. Think of a child learning to ride a bike. It requires balance, coordination, the ability to kind of judge distances and react to changes in the environment.
Yeah.
These are all examples of motor skills in action.
It makes sense when you put it that way. These skills are essential for navigating the world around us, not just for excelling in sports. And developing them during those early years can set kids up for a lifetime of confident and enjoyable movement.
Exactly.
But if PE is often sidelined or delivered ineffectively, what can we do about it? What does this research suggest?
Well, the research actually dives into 7 key factors that were hindering the success of physical education in Australian primary schools.
Okay.
And what's striking is that many of these factors are still relevant today, which I think highlights just how persistent these challenges are.
7 factors. Okay. That sounds like a lot to unpack. Let's dive in. What was the first factor that the researchers identified?
The first one they highlighted was the pressure of a crowded curriculum.
Uh-huh.
This is something that, many teachers and even parents, I think, can relate to the feeling that there's simply not enough time in the school day to cover everything that needs to be taught.
It's the classic struggle of too much to teach and too little time.
Right.
But is it really just a time constraint? Or could it be that we're not prioritizing PE as much as we are other subjects like math or language arts?
That's a great point. And the research suggests that in many cases, it wasn't just about, the number of hours in a school day, but also how those hours were being allocated, how they were being prioritized.
Yeah.
And sadly, PE often ended up getting squeezed out, especially in schools without that dedicated PE specialist. The pressure to prioritize other academic subjects meant that PE was often relegated to a less important role.
In this limited time allocation, it probably affected not just the amount of PE being taught, but also the
Right.
quality, right?
Right.
Did the research explore the specific aspects of PE that were being neglected when time was tight?
Absolutely. The researchers found that when PE was kind of crammed into a tight schedule, it was often the more holistic aspects of health and physical education that really got neglected. The focus shifted to simply getting kids moving rather than addressing those broader concepts of health and well-being.
So it's not just about physical activity, it's about understanding how to live a healthy life overall.
Right.
I can see how that broader perspective might get lost when time is of the essence. What was the second factor the research identified as a challenge for PE?
The second one was the challenge of integrating PE into a broader health education framework.
Okay.
In some schools, the line between PE and health education became kind of blurred. Physical activity ended up dominating the time that was allocated for both.
Yeah.
And this often meant that important topics, things related to nutrition, mental health, overall well-being, those who are being sidelined.
That's interesting. I could see how that might happen, especially if there isn't a clear understanding of the distinct roles that PE and health education play.
Yeah.
Did the research offer any insights into why this blurring of boundaries was happening? Was it a lack of guidance from educational authorities, or was it more of a grassroots issue within individual schools?
Well, the study actually points to a lack of clear, coherent policy from those educational authorities as a major contributing factor. This lack of a well-defined framework, it led to inconsistencies across schools. Some schools were merging PE and health education, while others were struggling to implement either effectively.
So a lack of clear direction from the top was kind of trickling down and creating confusion at the school level.
Exactly.
Makes sense. What was the third factor hindering PE's success?
The third factor was very closely related to that lack of policy.
Right.
It was the absence of agreed upon outcomes for PE.
Okay.
The researchers found that without a shared understanding of what PE was supposed to achieve, there was this significant variation in how it was taught and what students were expected to learn.
So even with a new curriculum in place, there was this disconnect between the theory and the reality of what was happening in school.
Precisely. The study highlights a really striking example. Out of the 3 schools that they researched, only 1 had developed a truly comprehensive PE program. And even then, it focused primarily on that physical activity component.
Good.
The other 2 schools were essentially making it up as they went along, which unsurprisingly led to, those inconsistencies and a lack of overall direction.
That lack of consistency must have been frustrating, for teachers, for students, for parents alike.
Right.
Sounds like a recipe for missed opportunities. Okay, on to factor number 4. What was it?
The fourth factor that the researchers identified was the decentralization of decision-making to school councils.
Okay.
So this essentially meant that the responsibility for shaping and implementing PE programs was largely shifted away from central education authorities and placed in the hands of individual schools.
So instead of a unified approach, guided by experts and clear policies, each school was essentially left to figure it out on their own.
That's the gist of it. And while empowering schools to make their own decisions can be beneficial in some contexts, in this case, it seemed to have contributed to the fragmentation and inconsistency that we were just discussing.
I imagine that also created a lot of variation in the quality of PE programs across different schools, depending on the priorities and the resources of each school council.
Exactly. And that brings us to the fifth factor, which is directly related to this decentralization, a reduction in the number of PE specialists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because if each school council is making its own decisions about resource allocation, some might decide that a dedicated PE specialist isn't a priority, even if the research suggests that it's crucial.
You hit the nail on the head. The researchers found that this decentralization often led to schools cutting back on specialist positions, either due to budget constraints or a lack of understanding of the value that these specialists brought to the table. And even in schools that did have a PE specialist, the study found that those specialists weren't always adequately qualified or skilled in teaching PE effectively.
So it's back to that issue of training and support.
Right.
Even if a school recognized the importance of a specialist,
Right.
there's no guarantee that they'd be able to find one that could actually deliver a high-quality program. Which brings us to factor number 6, I presume.
Yes. The sixth factor the research identified was the inadequate support from educational departments, teacher training institutions, and even employers.
Okay.
It seems that despite this recognized crisis in PE, there was a lack of investment in the resources and the training needed to address it.
Wait, so everyone was basically passing the buck on PE. Schools were blaming lack of funding, teacher training institutions weren't prioritizing PE pedagogy, and employers weren't providing adequate professional development opportunities.
It's a pretty bleak picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
The study points out that new teachers graduating in the early 2000s, they were often ill-equipped to teach PE effectively, and there was this lack of ongoing support to help them develop their skills once they were actually in the classroom.
So even if a teacher was passionate about PE and wanted to do a good job, the system was failing them by not providing the necessary training and support.
Yeah.
What a missed opportunity. Okay, let's tackle the final factor, number 7. What was it?
The seventh and final factor the researchers identified was the blurring of lines between PE and other sporting programs.
Okay.
This was a common misconception where schools kind of assumed that participation in organized sports was a sufficient substitute for a comprehensive PE program.
So the thinking was that as long as kids were playing some kind of sport, they were getting the physical activity they needed, and that was good enough.
That was the assumption. However, the researchers were quick to point out that organized sports, they often prioritize specialized skills and competition, whereas PE should aim to develop a broader range of fundamental movement skills and foster a positive attitude towards physical activity for all students, regardless of their athletic abilities.
That's such an important distinction. It's not just about athletic prowess. It's about developing a foundation of movement skills that can benefit children throughout their lives
Right.
in all sorts of ways.
Right.
Did the researchers delve into the specific differences between what a PE class should offer versus what kids might gain from organized sport?
They did. The study highlighted that while organized sports can be valuable for learning specific skills and teamwork, they often don't provide the same breadth of movement experiences that a well-rounded PE program can offer. PE, when done right, goes beyond simply teaching kids how to play a particular sport. It focuses on developing a wide range of fundamental movement skills like running, jumping, throwing, catching, balancing, coordinating movements.
So PE is more about building those foundational skills that can then be applied to a variety of activities, whether it's sports, dance, or simply navigating, everyday life with confidence and ease.
Exactly.
It sounds like the researchers were advocating for a much more holistic approach to movement education.
They were.
Did the study offer any examples of what a truly effective and comprehensive PE program might look like?
They did. In fact, the study concluded with a set of recommendations for how to address these 7 factors and improve the state of PE in Australian primary schools.
Okay, this is what I've been waiting for. After all that unpacking of challenges, I'm eager to hear what solutions they proposed.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those recommendations. What did the researchers suggest?
Well, the study really emphasizes that tackling those 7 factors we just discussed, that's absolutely key to turning the tide and revitalizing PE.
Okay.
They offer some really practical strategies, and I think you'll find that a lot of them they resonate even today.
Okay.
First and foremost, the researchers call for strong leadership and support from those at the top, educational authorities, policymakers, you name it.
So we need those higher ups to really
Sure.
step up and make PE a genuine priority and not just pay lip service to it.
Exactly.
What does that look like in practice?
It means developing clear policies and guidelines, allocating adequate funding, and making sure that schools actually have the resources they need to deliver quality PE programs.
Yeah.
It's about creating an environment where PE is valued and supported, not just tolerated or seen as an extra.
Yeah, because without that top-down support, it sounds like it's almost impossible for individual schools and teachers to make meaningful progress, no matter how passionate they are. It's like they're constantly swimming upstream.
That's a great analogy, and it leads perfectly into the second key takeaway: investing in teacher training and professional development.
Okay.
The researchers argue that even with the best curriculum in the world, it's not going to make a difference if teachers aren't equipped to deliver it effectively.
That makes total sense. You can't expect, teachers to work miracles without the proper training and support.
Yeah.
What do the researchers suggest in terms of specific actions that could be taken to improve teacher preparedness?
They had some very specific recommendations. For one, they emphasized the need for universities and teacher training programs to really revamp their approach to PE pedagogy.
Ooh.
Future teachers, they need to be equipped with with a deep understanding of child development, motor skill acquisition, and inclusive teaching practices that cater to, a diverse range of student needs and abilities.
So it's not just about knowing the rules of a sport or how to demonstrate a skill. It's about understanding the why behind movement education and how to create engaging learning experiences that cater to all students.
Precisely. And beyond that initial teacher training, the researchers also stressed the the importance of providing ongoing professional development opportunities.
Yeah.
This could involve workshops, mentoring programs, or even just simply creating spaces for teachers to collaborate, share best practices, and learn from each other's experiences.
Yeah, it sounds like a shift in mindset is needed.
Yeah.
We need to view PE as an evolving field that requires ongoing learning and professional growth, just like any other subject area.
Yeah.
What was the third recommendation from the study?
This one's all about shifting the culture within schools. The researchers emphasize the importance of creating a school environment that genuinely values and promotes physical activity.
All right.
It's not just about that 1 hour of PE per week. It's about weaving movement and play into the fabric of the entire school day.
So we're talking about going beyond the gym walls and finding ways to integrate movement into everyday school life.
Yeah.
What are some examples of how this could be done?
Oh, there are so many possibilities.
Yeah.
Schools could incorporate short bursts of physical activity, like brain breaks or active learning games, into classroom lessons.
Uh-huh.
They could encourage active travel to and from school, like walking or biking.
Yeah.
And they could create opportunities for movement during break times. Things like providing playground equipment that promotes active play, or organizing fun, inclusive games that get everyone moving.
It's about shifting attitudes and making physical activity a normal, enjoyable part of the school day rather than something that's confined to a specific time slot.
Absolutely. And it's also about making sure that everyone in the school community, from the principal to the teachers to the parents, they all see physical activity as essential for children's well-being, not just an optional extra.
Okay, on to the fourth and final recommendation. What did the researchers suggest?
The final recommendation focused on the importance of collaboration.
Okay.
The researchers stressed that, schools can't do it alone. They need to work closely with families and communities to create a supportive ecosystem for physical activity.
So it's that it takes a village approach.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that PE doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Mm.
It needs to be supported by a network of people who care about children's health and development.
Mm.
What are some examples of how schools could collaborate with families and communities?
There's so many ways to do this.
Yeah.
Schools could offer parent education workshops, on the importance of physical activity and how to encourage healthy movement habits at home.
Yeah.
They could partner with local community organizations to provide after-school sports programs or create opportunities for families to get active together.
This makes me think about all those families who might not have the resources or the opportunities to enroll their kids in expensive organized sports.
Right.
By collaborating with community organizations, schools could help level the playing field and ensure that all kids have access to quality physical activity experiences, regardless of their socioeconomic background.
Exactly. And it's not just about access to programs. It's also about fostering a sense of community and shared responsibility for children's well-being.
Yeah.
When families, schools, and communities, when they work together, everyone benefits.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. We started with a crisis in Australian PE and uncovered 7 major challenges. But we also explored some really practical solutions and inspiring examples of what a more holistic and effective approach to movement education could look like. What are your final thoughts on this research and its relevance today, even though it was conducted, almost 20 years ago?
Well, it's striking, actually, how many of the issues that were raised in this research are still relevant today.
Yeah.
Which I guess that kind of speaks to the persistent nature of these challenges, right?
Yeah.
But it also, it gives me a sense of hope because it means that the solutions they proposed, they're still applicable.
Right.
By focusing on strong leadership, investing in that teacher training, creating a culture that values movement, collaborating with families and communities, we can make a real difference in the lives of kids.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that physical activity, it's not just a subject to be taught. It's a fundamental aspect of human development and well-being.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has certainly challenged my own assumptions about PE and opened my eyes to the complex factors that contribute to its success or failure.
Yeah.
It's clear that creating a positive and empowering experience for all children it requires a multifaceted approach, right?
Yeah.
And a collective effort from everyone involved.
Definitely. It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in advocating for quality PE
Yeah.
and making sure that, future generations, they have the opportunity to develop that lifelong love of movement.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of physical education.
We hope this episode has sparked some new ideas and inspired you to think a little differently about the role of movement in children's lives.
And remember, this is just the start of the conversation. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, share your own PE experiences, and join the discussion on social media using hashtag #TheDeepDivePE.
Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.